Hey guys, just wrapped up week 4 of Grandmasters, and fortunately I got ahead with a 2-0 start, which means I'm in a pretty good spot to make playoffs from here. Not guaranteed, but a couple more wins should get me close to guaranteed playoffs from the upper division. So this week we started the round robin, where we actually are facing each of the people in our division once over the next 4 weeks, and then at the end we'll be sorted by scores and then assigned either playoffs or we'll have to be in the relegation bracket. My two opponents this week were Monsanto and Empanizado. Didn't really have a big read on Empanizado on what he was going to bring. I did some digging on Monsanto and tried to make a read on what he might be playing this week. I expected something along the lines of, not this exact lineup, but classes I thought he might be considering were Rogue, Druid, maybe Priest, although I wasn't super expecting Priest. So I thought it'd be a little bit of a slower lineup, and that did not happen. In fact, both him and Empanizado brought very aggressive archetypes. I think they both had Zoo Warlock, Tempo Demon Hunter, and Rage Warrior, which is what they're calling it now for some reason, and then Galacron Rogue, two of. Pretty aggressive lineup. So I'm going to go over the 4 decks that I brought with the expectation that I thought I'd be a little bit slower. I brought Spell Druid, which is awful against 4 aggressive decks. It's pretty good against Rogue, so I'll give it that, but not very good against Demon Hunter, Warrior, or Zoo, which is what they ended up bringing. So that was a bit of a missed mark there, but I'll explain some of my tech choices in regards to what I thought they might be bringing. Spell Druid seems to get the job pretty done against lower decks, especially Rogue. Rogue I had a pretty hard read on both of them. Well, not necessarily both of them, but Rogue was very, very popular, I think, from people I've spoken to, so I expected almost everyone to bring that in Americas. And with that, Druid is not a free win, but very, very, very high win rate against Rogue, which is why I want to bring this. Sometimes it still gets their Priest, and if you happen to... I know a couple of people are thinking about bringing Galacron Warlock. Against Galacron Warlock, this is okay as well. And what was the 4th one I was talking about? Anyways, whatever. I expected a bit of a slower lineup. I like the 1 Wild Growth I ended up bringing in the past few weeks, so I started to do that as well. I considered 2, but I didn't want to commit too heavily on making hard reads, because if I do expect, let's say, exactly Priest, Rogue, Warrior, which I could ban if it's a bit more aggressive, and then some sort of 4th deck like Druid in the mirror maybe, if I make that sort of hard read, I could make my Druid deck very, very greedy. But then if I'm wrong at all, this deck will not be banned against an aggressive lineup, and then they would just be able to sweep me because I don't have any good defensive cards. And stuff I could have cut for another Wild Growth would be a second Wrath. It is Cycle, but it's kind of early removal as well to help you stabilize against some of the aggro decks. And Starfall, I could have had like an extra Wild Growth. But what I did sell on was 1 Rising Winds, 1 Wrath, 1 Growth to help ramp a little bit. Starfall, which can help against Demon Hunter. I kind of expected almost everyone to bring Demon Hunter as well, because, you know, it's Demon Hunter at this point, and this can help quite a bit to come back on the board. You generally can't go 1-for-1 on their early threats. You can deal with the first couple ones with a Moonfire Hero Power or Crystal Power to kind of deal with some 2 health minions. But as you go on, if you're trading 1-for-1, by the time you get to 5 mana, you don't have much to do with Glowfly Swarm. And then if you get to 7 mana too, you don't have that many options in hand unless you have stuff like Fungal Fortunes early. So it's not a great idea to try going 1-for-1 against those types, against Demon Hunter specifically. So I thought a Starfall might help me come back if I start ramping up and then need to clear the board before I develop something. I still have 1 Mount, still have 1 Forest Aid. Helps Fungal Fortunes consistency a little bit. And I kind of like having 1 extra big thing to do with Kael'thas. Kael'thas with Overflow is great, but those are kind of very specific hands. And if you end up having Forest Aid over Glowfly Swarm with Kael'thas, you always summon 5 Treants. With the Kael'thas, a 6 board slot, so it's almost guaranteed. Not quite a full board, but you have a guaranteed 6 minions on the board, whereas if you have Kael'thas with Glowfly Swarm, if you don't have some of the drawing tools early on, it just doesn't make that many things, and at that point you rather just want a Glowfly Swarm to make the bigger board. So I think that's all the tech cards here. Yeah, I almost considered cutting the second Wrath, but I decided to hedge a little bit in case there were aggro decks being brought. So that's my Druid. I settled on bringing Highlander Rogue over 2 of Rogue. I feel like Highlander Rogue is a bit more flexible, and the power spikes you have it with it help you deal against some of the more aggressive decks like Demon Hunter, Warrior, I guess Zoo as well, because you can do some sort of Zephyr-y things with the board. Honestly, I didn't really expect Zoo. Not a fan of the deck, and I'm surprised so many people brought in Americas. So that really blindsided me, but I think with some of the tech cards I had, well, actually, I banned Zoo both matches and left up Warrior. And the reason I did that, some people were asking me, I felt Druid wins more often against Warrior than against Zoo. And the toughest deck for me to win with in my lineup against a full aggro lineup is Druid. So I needed to try to get better matchups for my Druid. Obviously, if I cube my Druid into their Rogue, great, but that's not always going to happen. So I wanted to give my Druid a few extra chances to try and get the win. Right, so Highlander Rogue I thought was a bit more flexible in what it can do. It's a bit less consistent than 2 of Galakron than 2 of Galakron Rogue, but I don't know, in practice I felt like the 2 of Galakron Rogue felt a little bit too clunky. It wasn't quite getting off. It really is all in on whether or not you draw Galakron. Every game you draw it or Kronks, you kind of get there, and every game you don't, you just kind of die. So I thought this was a bit better alternative to try and curve out a bit more consistently. And by consistently, I mean you more often have a 1, 2, 3, 4 curve, or maybe not 1, 2, 3, 4, but you have some stuff to do most of the time, even if you don't have your invoke into Galakron, like the Galakron Rogue would. I feel like you have a wider range of things you can do with this deck, and it kind of boiled down to me making 2 big Edwins, which is why the thumbnail you'll see this week is Edwin, because Edwin kind of carried me this week, at least in the Rogue games. Some of my tech choices, I didn't really have that many tech choices. The only one I had in particular that I want to point out is Waste Warden. I expected a bit more Druid, considering how well Druid performed the past few weeks. Maybe it was just for me then. It performed well because I was able to sweep with it in the last year standing week, so week 2. Although I guess it performed a little poorly last week when we had the 10-week format, 10-class format, so maybe people were turned off a little bit from there. But I included a Waste Warden because I thought that would be one of the most difficult matchups. Because of that, the Waste Warden can help flip that around in your favor. Secret package, I don't have the stealth package in there, but Spy Mistress is still a pretty good card to run. You want some early minions to help against Demon Hunter. With Demon Hunter and Warrior in the field, even though I'm banning Warrior most likely, and if Zoo pops up, I guess I'm banning Zoo, Ooze still kind of helps against Demon Hunter. It's not great, but I felt like it was enough to just throw out there. Even if you don't hit a Warglaves of Azzinoth with it, just playing it against an Umberwing, I found in practice could help a little bit too, just to stop their early aggression and then let you get to your sort of bigger bombs. Shadow Weaver I thought would help as well against the same thing, against both Demon Hunter and Warrior, if I happen to leave those up, which I did. Other than that, nothing too crazy here in terms of tech cards. Some people weren't running CMAT, but I think CMAT was fine in this format. I mean, it's Conquest best of 5. Those are the only, I think, notable things. Having the Waste Warden and the Frozen Shadow Weaver Ooze. I could have decided to take this out and put something else in, but it's also just a 2-drop if I want to throw it out there. But against the weapon classes, it has some utilization, even if it's not the nuttiest thing ever. Moving on to Warrior. Warrior was pretty standard. I didn't spend too much time on this list. I thought if there are priests, I kind of want Grom in there. And if there aren't priests and this gets left up, I mean, the deck just does pretty broken things. So I wasn't too concerned about this being left up. Yeah. I think most people are running either 2 Korkrons with the minus Grom, or 2 Korkrons and Grom minus Gorefiend. I thought I'd leave Gorefiend up. Feels nice in some of the tempo matchups. I didn't think it was going to be so slow that I need the full burst combo, but I still wanted to have that available if it was a slower week in terms of lineups people brought. So I did have Grom in there. And finally, Demon Hunter. Again, not too much to say here. This might be the exact same 30 cards I brought last week. I think it is the exact... No, it's not. Actually, so Muzzy came out with a list that had 2 Beaming Sidekicks earlier this week. And that helps quite a bit in the aggro matchups. I'm sure on ladder it helps more against Warrior, which I did end up leaving up. And then the mirror can help quite a bit too, because it stops them from just killing your thing with hero power twin slice. They have to commit a lot more to it. Against rogue, it doesn't add a backstab or seal it. I mean, any one drop that you want to play with a sidekick. Can help you with the altruist turns. Sometimes they can't clear it if you buff it up to 4 health. So it's a bit more aggressive in terms of the fact that it has more one drops, but it's also a little stickier. Not a lot. It doesn't completely change matchups, but I think it does help quite a bit, and I included that this week. I was not running... What did I cut for it, actually? I think Muzzy's list initially had the Frenzied Fellwings. Let me pull that up real quick so you guys know what I'm talking about. But I felt this was a little too all-in on aggro, because if I end up hitting the mirrors or some other tempo matchup, these become really, really bad. So because I didn't really like this card, I opted to include 2 Setless Watchers, which ended up being pretty useful. Was a big fan of them. They serve different purposes, but I was more of a fan of the Setless Watchers than the Fellwings. So with this lineup, I did manage to 2-0 this week. Great, big fan of that. Totally misread. I'll say this. I totally misread what the field was going to be. I did expect rogue, and there were a lot of rogues, but almost no druids, almost no priests. So very, very, very unfortunate read there, because my lineup was kind of trying to beat some of those decks, which didn't pop up. I think I was in favored in both matchups. Not super heavily, but probably maybe 40-45% chance to win. Rough estimate, obviously. So very fortunate I was able to get those despite being unfavored in the series. But better to be lucky than good sometimes. So that's that's great. Yeah, that's it for this week. I'll do this again next week, of course. Deck codes are below in the description. Feel free to comment, subscribe, stuff you'd like to see, etc. I'll be coming out with videos over the next week or two about more educational things instead of just posting my deck lists. Maybe how to play specific decks, deck guides, how to beat or play against certain decks on the ladder right now. If you're interested in some specifics like that, feel free to comment below. Otherwise, go follow me on Twitter and check out when I stream on Twitch, which links will also be below in the description. Thanks for hanging out. See you guys later.